Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, looking at the causes of the Vietnam Wars with a focus on political or ideological factors. Now, whether you are looking at the Vietnamese War against the French, against the Americans, or as a civil war, politics and ideology should be at the heart of your explanation. With regard to both the war against the French and the war against the Americans, and for that matter the Japanese, nationalism versus imperialism, you could argue neo-imperialism in the American case, was a big factor. Whilst in the war against the Americans, the Cold War, and so politics and ideology, communism versus liberalism and capitalism, has to be a big factor too. As I said in my video that introduced the Vietnam Wars, the French had lorded over the Vietnamese since Indochina was formed in 1887, which consisted of Vietnam and Cambodia originally, Laos being added in 1893. They placed puppet emperors as tacit figureheads, but the administration was headed by a French governor-general, secured by the French military, and administered with the support of French-speaking local officials, who benefited a good deal from their collaboration with the imperial power, and were accordingly hated by nationalists and ordinary Vietnamese alike. But Vietnamese nationalism only provoked French brutality. And at the end of World War I, as far back as that, Vietnamese nationalists, headed by a then unknown Ho Chi Minh, petitioned President Wilson regarding Vietnamese independence. But it's not thought that President Wilson even got to see their petition. But it shows how far back Vietnamese nationalism goes. The Viet Minh that fought the Japanese and the French, though dominated by the communists, were first and foremost a nationalist group, a united front formed to free Vietnam from foreign rule. It called for national independence as well as social reform. And when the Japanese formally surrendered on September 2nd, 1945, Ho Chi Minh declared Vietnamese independence before a crowd of 500,000 people in Hanoi, and with an American OSS officer, that's the forerunner to the CIA, looking on. Ho Chi Minh quoted Thomas Jefferson from the American Declaration of Independence and hoped for American support. After all, America was anti-imperialist. However, as the wartime alliance with the Soviet Union rapidly broke down, and America with a new president, President Truman, who was much more hostile to the Soviet Union, it proved impossible for America to see beyond the Viet Minh's links to the communists. And those links were real. Ho Chi Minh was a founding member of the Vietnamese Communist Party, later renamed the Indochinese Communist Party. And he had been a member of the French Communist Party when he lived in France. So America first gave the French its support, and when they were defeated, gave Ngo Dinh Diem their support, even though he was clearly not a liberal, and even though Ho Chi Minh was as much a nationalist as a communist. America could only see Vietnam in the context of the Cold War, and that context is important. In 1949, Mao had led the Chinese Communist Party to victory in the Chinese Civil War. In the same year, the Soviet Union became a nuclear power. Meanwhile, in Burma and Malaya, Myanmar and Malaysia, respectively, communists were fighting to gain control from the British. And in 1950 in Korea, Kim Il-sung invaded South Korea. For America, Vietnam was another Cold War issue, another round against their ideological enemy. They just couldn't see past it. Eisenhower couldn't, neither could Kennedy, and neither could Johnson. It was Eisenhower, in defending his policy to support the French in 1954, that gave us the falling domino principle. You have a row of dominoes set up, he said. You knock over the first one, and what will happen to the last one is the certainty that it will go over very quickly. So you could have a beginning of a disintegration that would have the most profound influences. 2 years later, Kennedy, then still a senator, used a different metaphor, the finger in the dike. And at his inauguration as president, he said, "Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and success of liberty." While Johnson, as minority leader of the Senate at the time of the Geneva Accords, said, "We have been caught bluffing by our enemies. Today it is Indochina, tomorrow Asia may be in flames, and the day after the Western Alliance will be in ruins." And as president, he spoke of a very vital shield. If we are driven from the field in Vietnam, then no nation ever again will have the same confidence in American promises or in American protection. For America, it was always very ideological, very political. Now, none of this is to turn this issue into a Cold War question. You must not do that. But it does address the way America saw Vietnam and its involvement in Vietnam in ideological and so political terms. I do hope you found this presentation useful. Do sign up for my channel if you haven't already done so, and tell your friends about it for me. But for now, let me thank you for listening and wish you the very best of luck with your studies. Cheers.